Imagine getting paid just for sharing your thoughts on products and services you use every day. With Survey Junkie, it's that simple. Click on the link in the video description to discover how you can start earning today by taking surveys.
Who came out ahead when the Minneapolis City Council announced a deal with Uber and Lyft to increase driver pay and improve working conditions last month? On May 20th, the City Council heralded a compromise with the ride-hailing companies. Uber and Lyft would agree to an inflation-pegged wage floor matching Minnesota's minimum wage of $15 an hour after expenses. Some lawmakers have hailed this as a 20% raise for drivers. However, the deal's pay rates are lower than almost every proposal made over the past 2 years amid a bitter fight between Uber, Lyft, their drivers, and lawmakers. Drivers, often arbitrarily fired, deactivated by opaque algorithms, are now able to appeal dismissals. There's also funding for a nonprofit driver center for driver rights education. The real gem may be the expansion of insurance coverage requirements for ride-hail drivers up to $1 million that now includes the time immediately after ending a trip, which will help drivers with medical costs and lost wages after assaults or accidents. This deal, however, preserves integral parts of the digital ride-hail model, allowing Uber and Lyft to continue operating and undermine the compromise later. In the 2-year clash over the deal, ride-hail driver groups demonstrated, lobbied lawmakers, and even negotiated with Uber. Uber and Lyft repeatedly threatened capital strikes, promising to leave the state 3 separate times over proposed legislation. Each time the companies have drawn political blood, the first threat convinced Tim Walz, the governor, to kill a bill in May 2023 with his first veto. The second prompted Jacob Frey, the Minneapolis mayor, to veto an ordinance passed by City Council in August that year. The third came after Frey again vetoed an ordinance in March, but was overridden by the City Council. Threatening capital strikes lets these firms narrow our political horizons while bolstering their own position. We debate driver pay rates that they inevitably undermine while distracted from their inordinate structural power. Cities preemptively dilute their ambitions. Customers rationalize higher prices, and drivers consign themselves to marginal improvements. So who really came out ahead? A sympathetic telling holds that drivers scored an immediate victory. Drivers' wages would zero out if Uber and Lyft left the state. A deal that lets drivers keep working and earn better wages positions them to continue fighting for better deals. There are 2 key pillars of the digital ride-hail model that perpetually degrade driver working conditions. 1. Driver misclassification as contractors to lower labor costs, and 2. Information asymmetry between workers, regulators, and firms. Both are left alone by Minneapolis's deal, but the decision to abandon data transparency specifically ensures working conditions will deteriorate due to what Veena Dubal, labor ethnography and UC Irvine law professor, calls algorithmic wage discrimination. Utilizing constant worker surveillance, firms like Uber and Lyft calculate the minimum pay rates necessary to extract the most value from each driver. Dubal observes that even if the work is the same, entirely unpredictable and opaque means calculate what a driver's labor is worth. With the removal of predictability goes any notion of fairness, as workers are tricked by algorithms to gamble on whether assigned work will be worth the expenses incurred, normalizing longer hours and poorer conditions. A wage floor alone is insufficient to fight this dynamic. Moving away from data transparency creates a massive hole in the bill. Uber and Lyft reportedly lobbied to block any guarantee of minimum earnings on every trip. Instead, ride-hail firms will top off drivers whose average earnings are below the minimum during a 2-week pay period. And while the bill codifies pay transparency on the driver's end, it dropped the ordinance's requirement that ride-hail firms make regular and unrestricted data disclosures to Minneapolis. After New York City introduced its wage floor, an hourly net income of $17.22, Uber and Lyft responded by introducing a tiered quota system and forcing a lockout, a coercive strategy where an employer denies employees work until they accept new terms. Drivers were forced to work substantially longer hours to receive priority for scheduling shifts. The more trips done each day, the better chance a driver had to schedule shifts during peak business hours. Drivers who failed to meet